everybody. And
Thank you.
our today's guest speaker for Fellow Talk 8, arranged by Fellow Cement Society of India, Pune. The series of the talk show on technical issues, everything regarding the cement technology. Uh, Professor Alon Joshi, he is a professor from MIT, and he has done many academic research on the ferrocement components as a ferrocement material, and he will be presenting today some case studies for different elements of ferrocement for seismic proof designs in ferrocement technology. Or in particular, he will be talking about the seismic performance of structures.
So, very good evening to all, and in some cases, a good morning. I am overwhelmed by the invitations received from Ferrocement Society to present my topic here. I am equally overwhelmed to have Dr. Arun Purandare sir here because he has been my mentor and he has ignited the interest in this particular topic in me. Uh, At the same time, I am very much aware that I have worked only for a while in this area, maybe 3 years, and I see many stalwarts here in the attendees list. So, pardon me if I make any obvious mistake. Also, I would like to have your opinion about the research direction that we are taking. Please give your comments and suggestions for the future research. So as I have worked for a while, only for a while in this field, what I am going to do is the 60% time I am going to talk about the work done by the researchers as far as the seismic design is concerned, and 40% time I will be talking about what I am doing at MIT WPU. So let me share my presentation. So today I will be talking on ferrocement seismic performance of structures with ferrocement elements. So I will be covering three aspects here. So one of the aspect is seismic behavior of structures strengthened with ferrocement elements, seismic behavior of ferrocement structures, and seismic behavior of ferrocement and light gauge steel composites. So it may seem like the first and third point is same, but it is not so. In the first point, we will be talking about the elements that add to the strength and stiffness and maybe ductility of a existing structure, whereas in the last point, ferrocement and light gauge steel composites, they share equal responsibility of sharing the load and everything, even at the working stress level, even at the static load. Having said that, when we discuss the dynamic behavior or when we study the dynamic behavior of any structure for that matter, what are the properties that generally we are interested in apart from those are required in statics? For example, in statics, we require most probably the stiffness and its degradation over the strain level. But in dynamics, the problem is more complex because we will have to look at the mass distribution, amount of mass the structure has, and its structural damping. These three properties are important as far as elastic analysis is concerned. But when we venture into the plasticity or near failure region, then we have to take into account stiffness degradation. Then we have to also take into account hysteretic damping in addition to the structural damping. So typically, all the studies that we are going to have will be focused on evaluating these parameters for a structure involving ferrocement. Now, we all know that ferrocement and reinforced concrete structures, they behave differently under, let us say, impact loading. Ferrocement structure would have widespread cracks because they have closely spaced reinforcements of smaller diameters. The cracks would be widely spaced and the structure would remain intact even after an impact of significant magnitude. Whereas, if we look at the RCC structure, the reinforcement is placed far away, and therefore, typically the RCC structures fail by crumbling, they fail by delamination, or they exhibit more brittle failure. So, ferrocement inherently has ductility more than the RCC structures, and that is going to be advisable as far as the seismic behavior is concerned. Now we will begin with the first part of the topic, that is seismic behavior of structures which are strengthened with ferrocement elements. So I have taken a typical case study of, means I have referred to a research. I am taking the example of a typical masonry building. If we have unreinforced masonry building, we all know that it has a very poor performance in the event of earthquake. That poor performance can be mainly owed to the rocking behavior of out of plane, rocking behavior of cross walls or walls which are normal to the direction of earthquake, where the span of rocking becomes the entire story height. And it rocks as shown in the figure A. Whereas here, what has been done in the literature is they have provided ferrocement bandage and splint elements. These can be provided into two ways. In either ways, the mesh is provided on both sides of the masonry wall, and it is connected through a shear connector by drilling hole at regular intervals along the length of bandages and along the length of splits. Now with this, what happens is the rocking behavior now, instead of the story height becoming the span for rocking, the span becomes divided like H1 and H2 as shown in figure B, and that improves the seismic performance of seismic performance of cross walls, that is walls perpendicular to the earthquake plane, significantly. Now the same research shows the graph fragility curves for the reinforced for the masonry buildings which are unreinforced and which have this bandage and splint arrangement using ferrocement elements. The left hand side curve is the one for unreinforced masonry without bandage and splint. So as we can see, let us say on x-axis there is a spectral displacement, which is the intensity parameter for the earthquake. As the earthquake intensity goes on increasing, the spectral displacement goes on increasing. Whereas on the y-axis, probability of exceeding a particular damage state has been plotted. For example, there are 4 damage states: slight damage, moderate damage, extensive, and complete collapse. So a probability of exceedance of a slight damage at the spectral displacement, let us say 2, we can observe it here to be equal to somewhere close to 0.1. Whereas if we look at the right hand side curve, for the same spectral intensity and for the same damage state, it is well below 0.1. That means the entire curve is shifted towards right, indicating that the seismic behavior of the building has phenomenally increased, has phenomenally improved. So this is one of the successful methodologies of strengthening a masonry using ferrocements. I will quote the another study where infilled RC walls, they have been strengthened at particular locations using masonry with ferrocement paneling. For example, you can see a infilled masonry here. On top of that, this is the ferrocement panel, and this ferrocement panel is connected to masonry through 32 mm diameter nails at the regular interval of 250 mm center to center spacing horizontally and 500 mm center to center spacing vertically. And this ferrocement elements, the reinforcement mesh in the ferrocement elements is connected to a column through a penetrating screw. This reinforcement is tied, the mesh is tied to these screws at regular intervals, and these screws are embedded inside the column. So there is a connectivity between ferrocement mesh and column, and there is a connectivity between ferrocement panel and the masonry. And such kind of arrangement has been tested for a given gravitational load. Let us say we are considering a wall of 2-story building. Then we will compute the gravity load coming on the first floor level, and that will be applied by vertical jacks shown here. 200 kilonewton is applied in this case. And then you have horizontal hydraulic actuators. These actuators push the masonry in either direction. So we obtain a reversal of displacement, that is something similar to the earthquake, but in the static sense. So what we are going to get is this lateral deformation versus story drift hysteretic behavior. There are 2 plots plotted here. The one above is infilled masonry without this ferrocement jacketing, and then we have the infilled masonry with FC laminated with FC lamination. So as can be clearly seen, not only the strength has significantly improved. Always increasing the strength may not be appropriate in case of earthquake design, but the more interesting fact is, if you look at maximum displacement, the area under this hysteresis loop has increased. This area talks something about the energy dissipation capacity of the element. So by providing this, The strength stiffness, no doubt it has increased, but it has also increased the energy dissipation capacity, which gives the favorable behavior under the earthquake. Now I'm moving towards the last study in the segment one, and that is, this is a doctoral thesis uh, in University of British Columbia. It is very recent, 2020. So what is done in this thesis is, there are two bridge piers in Canada. The thesis says in Canada most of the bridges have reached their design life, and they need serious attention as far as their deterioration is concerned. So in this study, there are two bridge piers which are taken. The bridge pier on the back side is the shear deficient bridge pier, whereas the bridge pier on the front side is seismically damaged bridge pier. This seismically damaged bridge pier and shear deficient bridge pier has been strengthened by providing a ferrocement jacketing up to certain height, and that can be seen in this figure. We can see the ferrocement mesh here. This is a schematic of this scheme. So this is a very interesting study where the damaged and shear deficient column bridge pier has been repaired and strengthened with the help of ferrocement jacketing. So we can see the mesh, ferrocement mesh here, and this is the comparison of virgin stiffness and force moment curvature diagram vis-a-vis the column jacketed with ferrocement. For that, the moment curvature diagram. The thick line shows the diagram for column with jacketed with ferrocement, whereas the dotted line shows the virgin stress strain curve, virgin moment curvature diagram. There are 2 points to be noted here. Initially, the stiffness has been regained. Then, from the load of from the moment of let us say 20 to 80, the stiffness has not totally regained, but the strength has been surpassed. So strength wise, the column is okay. Initial stiffness wise, it's okay. There is some slight stiffness degradation remaining even after ferrocement jacketing for some range of moment. But interesting fact to observe is the ductility has tremendously increased, and this added ductility is going to enhance the performance of this bridge under the event of earthquake. For the same column, this is the force versus deformation curve of virgin column in dotted line and jacketed with ferrocement in thick line. And below is the hysteretic behavior of the column. So we can see nice broadening hysteresis loops, indicating that the energy dissipation capacity and hysteretic damping is increasing as the damage propagates. And this is in fact a very good indication for better seismic performance. Now I am coming to the second segment of this talk, and that is studying the seismic behavior, or studying the properties which are required for enhancing the seismic behavior of ferrocement structures themselves. So these are not used as a strengthening, but these are the structures in themselves. For example, this is a precast ferrocement wall, and it has been tested with reaction wall, reaction frame and strong floor facility for a lateral load which is cyclic in nature. So there is reversal of the load occurring. And what are the results? So the result obtained for this panel, we can also have a look at the dimension of the test specimen. It is 2400 mm, that means around 2.4 meters, center to center distance between the base and top capping. Now from this behavior, what has been done here? There are two things that we get here. One is the backbone curve, which is shown in black dotted line and red dotted line on to and fro sides. And we also get how does the area under hysteretic curve goes on increasing as the displacement goes on increasing. Have a simplified model parameter calibration based on this, and using that simplified calibrated model, we can now go for the numerical modeling of two-story wall, which mimics the two-story building. And for that, it can be subjected to various earthquakes, and then we can do a incremental dynamic analysis. So what I mean by incremental dynamic analysis is, let us say peak ground acceleration is our intensity measure of the earthquake. So I will collect let us say Bhuj time history, Bhuj earthquake time history. Its PGA may be something, but I will not make it 0.1 times G. and then I will go on increasing it successively. So I will go on scaling this time history to arrive peak ground accelerations of 0.1 g, 0.2 g, 0.3 g, 0.4 g, till the structure or the numerical model says that the structure has failed. So such kind of analysis will give me something called as IDA curve. So such IDA curve is shown at the bottom left corner. So what does this IDA curve give? It gives you the drift ratio on x-axis, and on y-axis it is intensity parameter of the earthquake. In this particular case, they have not adopted PGA as an intensity parameter. Instead, they have adopted as spectral acceleration of first mode as the parameter. And we can see that this drift ratio, as it goes on increasing, then this curve goes on becoming flatter and flatter. So it is something similar. IDA is something similar to static pushover analysis, but in dynamic sense. Now, for various earthquakes, this exercise has been done, and then 16 percentile, 84 percentile curves are plotted in dotted blue lines here, whereas the median curve is plotted in the thick blue line. This median curve, I have taken it on the right hand side top, and looking at the characteristics of this curve and damage accumulation in the model, we can find out the drift ratios corresponding to various damage states, such as immediate occupancy, life safety, collapse prevention, and complete collapse. Based on these damage states, then a fragility curve can be plotted. So that typical fragility curve is plotted below. For example, on x-axis, we have earthquake intensity. It may as well be peak ground acceleration, but in this case, it is spectral acceleration. And on y-axis, we express the probability of exceedance of a particular damage state. If you clearly observe here, for design basis earthquake and maximum considered earthquake, the earthquake intensity parameter is around 1 SA is around 1 meter per second, 1 G. So it is 1 into 9.81 meter per second square. And if you look at all the curves, green one, yellow one, orange one, and red one, none of the curve has shooted beyond 0 till this limit. What does it mean? It means till the design basis earthquake and maximum considered earthquake is reached, the probability of exceedance of any of the damage state, even immediate occupancy damage state, is 0. That indicates a phenomenally increased, a phenomenal performance under the event, seismic performance under seismic performance of a model. This is the another example where the ferrocement dwelling has been constructed on the shake table, and you can see that the roof is light roof or flexible roof. Therefore, roof is not modeled here on shake table. Roof is not cast on the top. That is because it is a typical case of housings where the roof is either flexible or it is light, so it doesn't affect the overall behavior of the structure. So that has not been modeled, and on this shake table, this model is subjected to various time histories of earthquakes with increasing PGS, and the graph here gives you the probability of exceedance of a particular damage state. So we can see up to the PGA of around 0.4 G, the collapse, the probability of exceeding the collapse or reaching the collapse is marginal. So this gives us the idea that this ferrocement house with light roof is performing not very good, but averagely okay. Up to 0.4 G, it is not reaching the collapse. It is reaching the moderate damage. That's okay, but the life is saved. Therefore, this ferrocement housing dwelling is performing averagely in the event of the earthquake. However, we can improve its performance by looking at another interesting study. So I am now going to quote the another study that doesn't involve ferrocement, but that has given us the idea to incorporate ferrocement into it. This study typically, on the top corner, top left-hand side corner, I have shown the light gauge steel sections with the cladding of various materials. So we have a cladding of steel sheet only on one side. Then in another case, we have a steel sheet on one side and gypsum board on another side. Then we have fiber cement board on one side and steel sheet on the other side. So how does this wall typically looks like? So it is shown on the bottom corner, bottom right side corner figure. So we have LGS framing members which are cladded with various claddings such as wood, steel, gypsum board, fiber cement board, so on and so forth. And for all these combinations of cladding materials, this test, which is shown schematically on the left hand side bottom, has been performed. So these walls have been fixed at base, and at the top we are applying to and fro displacements. So we are essentially characterizing the cyclic behavior of these walls under the cyclic loading. Of course, it is static loading, but it gives us many parameters to model its seismic response. And then then this study gives you the hysteretic behavior for various claddings. So for example, the first diagram gives you with steel cladding on one face. Then you have steel cladding on front face and gypsum cladding on the back face. What is important to observe in this is we get nicely widened, broadened hysteresis loops near failure, and we have good stiffness and strength for these panels. This gave us an idea, why not have ferrocement panels on as a cladding members. This is not my idea, obviously. This idea has been proposed by Dr. Arun Purandare. So I will just explain you the schematic. So what we have done is we have used a ferrocement panel of typical dimension 900 by 600 mm. So we have 900 mm by 600 mm by 18 mm thick panels with 2 layers of wire mesh reinforcement. The mesh is of 1 mm dia GI wires, and they are placed at 20 mm center to center distance, of course, in both directions at top and bottom, with the cover of about 2.5 mm, 2.5 to 3 mm. That depends upon the diameter of spacer bar. These ferrocement panels have been attached or have been pasted by self-tapping screws, which I have shown in the bottom corner, left corner figure. These self-tapping screws, they fix these ferrocement panels on either side of light gauge columns. These light gauge columns can be C sections connected, C sections with lips connected back to back, or they can be even box sections. And we have, and these ferrocement panels are connected from either side through these self-tapping screws. This arrangement typically looks like this. So all these structures have been designed and supervised by Dr. Arun Purandare. We have light gauge steel framing members here, and on top of that, the ferrocement panels have been pasted using the self-tapping screws at regular intervals. Typically, what we have used is 150 mm center to center distance. Now, at MIT, what we are trying to do is we are trying to model this in a finite element software where, as you can see on the right hand side bottom corner, this is the finite element model of one panel. The height is 900 mm, width is 600 mm. We have light gauge steel box section on either sides and light gauge steel box section beam on top. And this has been and these ferrocement panels have been connected to this light gauge steel sections through shear connectors in Abaqus. So the entire thing is modeled discretely. Ferrocement panel has been modeled separately. The reinforcement within the ferrocement panel has been modeled through a smeared layer approach. Then the screw is modeled separately, and the light gauge steel tubes are modeled separately. For this model, the pushover analysis has been done. That means at the top, we go on applying a displacement till the failure occurs. And what we measure is the base shear, base reaction. So we can draw a graph of base shear on y-axis and the displacement at top on x-axis. However, this model is computationally very costly. It takes hell lot of time. So therefore, there is a need to propose a simplified model. So corresponding to this, a simplified model is proposed, and it is shown on the top left-hand side corner. It involves the springs and dampers, and you can see I have superimposed the results of superimposed model and FE model over one another. Not only it predicts the strength in agreement, it also predicts the ultimate displacement in fair agreement. So therefore, we can say this model, the macro model or simplified model that I am showing, works well, and it works within no time. It takes hardly any time to run the simulation of pushover analysis. Now, this is as far as the static comparison is concerned. But now, what about dynamics? Are these two models equal when it comes to the dynamic performance? So as an indicator, you can see the first mode of this finite element model is a in-plane sway mode, and its frequency is somewhere close to, let us say, 200 Hertz. this is the sway mode that I have obtained with the simplified model and frequency within 10% agreement. Also, if I subject this model to a base acceleration time history, then I am going to get a hysteretic behavior. That hysteretic behavior through detailed finite element model and simplified model is superimposed on one another. And this is done for a Bhuj earthquake time history scaled to PGA of 1.5 G. So with this, I am quite sure that the simplified model is going to work well. Now, it is not merely enough to model a single panel isolatedly in a wall. Instead, the entire wall now has been modeled in Abaqus, and it has been also modeled using the simplified model. And the curve shows the comparison of pushover results. And this animation shows us the first mode of vibration of both the structures. And the natural frequency is in agreement. So with this confidence in mind, what we have done at MIT is we have subjected this full scale one story model without opening, with opening, then two story full scale model with and without openings to several earthquake excitations. And these earthquake excitations, from those earthquake excitations, we get something called as the incremental dynamic analysis curve. So this is PGA versus maximum drift ratio for various earthquakes. Next step is to develop the fragility curves. So where we can specify at what level of PGA or at what level of intensity parameter does the failure occur if you provide a particular arrangement of ferrocement and LGS. So this is next in line, and of course, citing the pandemic, we could not do its experimental simulation, but that's pending. Experimental validation, once this pandemic rules are eased down, we can do it, the experimental validation. This is the direction in which we are proceeding at MIT WPU. Now, I would like to state the summary and the direction of future research. So, as I said, the ferrocement structures are lightweight, and that's the biggest advantage as far as seismicity is concerned. Because lesser the mass, lesser is the seismic force or inertial force that is attracted. The ferrocement LGS, particularly construction, is very fast and it is sustainable, as we are going to save on steel and we are going to save on cement. Enormous amount of quantity of cement and steel will be saved. Only worry is connection behavior. So to validate the connection behavior analytically and experimentally, we need to perform extensive experimental research on in-plane and out-of-plane behavior of ferrocement LGS composites. And this all should come in the format of course, because right now, in absence of choral provisions, it is very difficult to accept this as an alternative technique of construction. So with this closing remarks and summary, I thank all of you.
The excellent presentation. Thank you, Professor Amit Joshi. You are doing very innovative kind of academic research in MIT, and we are happy to listen to your presentation. I will comment myself, start with my comment, that it is actually a complementary thing to go ahead. The academic researches, what are done in the colleges and experiences from the constructors and the experts, both together, they have to be put up before the BIS committee, and then only this is a very great work you are doing, the academic research work, which will be useful to get our code sanctioned by the BIS. So I thank for that from your side. At the first outset, I would like to go to Dr. Arun Purandare sir for his comment. Sir, I would like to know from you that great research work is going on in MIT. Can you just cover the ideas behind all these different researches you are doing with the help of Dr. Kulkarni, and Dr. Joshi also, and the objectives of that? Do you have any plan, see, starting from the material testing, then its behavior, element testing, downfield testing? So this way, is there any plan to continue? And particularly about today's project, today's topic. Professor Purandare sir.
Ferrocement can be used in various ways, and the thing that I had done using ferrocement panels, I had made some houses in ferrocement panels, and I thought that it was an excellent material with tremendous shear capacity and lightweight. It was also seen that it was very easy to assemble the building, and the time taken was uh, extremely less. I would say something like 15% of our RCC and brickwork work time. In order to check that up, I was somehow able to convince one of my clients to do this work. And you have seen two pictures of jobs done under me. And then I thought that is it that this material is adding to the compression capacity of the light gauge steel that I was using. As you may be aware, light gauge steel is designed for compression failure because
Right.
of the thickness to width ratio, which is about 40. So it has a tendency in to fail in buckling. The stresses which are allowed by the code are, say, for the sake of argument, 100. Then if you stiffen the flanges, then the very stress by the calculation given by code is 165, about 65% higher. So using the ferrocement panels, the strength capacity of the light gauge steel increased by 65%. That was a big advantage in thinking about building a ground and two upper or three upper building.
Okay.
Presently, I am constructing one building in
Mhm.
Urari of G+2 using the same system.
Okay. So,
The 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 work done in IIT in MIT
mhm.
also stayed. You have seen the picture of a model that was done with a light gauge steel section with two panels on either side.
Mhm.
That in compression was carrying 4 times the load allowed for the steel section at
Mhm.
failure. Now that was a huge boost to our work, and then we said that yes, this is giving great advantage. Now at present it is not in code, so I am not using it in the design, but as the experimental work increases and more work is put before all the stakeholders, then the use of ferrocement panels as stiffener and load carrying members will be utilized, if not 4 times, at least double.
Okay.
That would be a huge advantage. A section which was possible to be used for ground and 2 could possibly be used for ground and 5. So that is a great advantage. And the work Dr. Joshi has carried out along with his students
Okay.
showed that we can work on a building, and the saving that we have seen in just the, what should I say, the box part of the structure, that
Mhm.
is the steel work and the slab and the wall. If we compare it to the RCC work
Mhm.
at the present, my contractors are quoting 400 rupees per square foot less for
Mhm.
equivalent work. That was one. And
Yeah,
another
this.
thing that I have observed is that one slab,
Mhm.
say of about 4,000 square feet,
Mhm.
can be completed every 10th day.
Okay. Can I go to uh, Dr. A.K. Jain, sir?
The part about modeling or scaling a full scale structure into a small model in the lab. There was something called Reynolds number and things like that. I mean, I have forgotten all that. What I'm trying to point out is you are using a 18 thick wall for 600 by 900 component, and you are using the same wall for 2700 into 3000 wall. Is
Uh,
that correct? Is that
no, sir. I
statement
think
correct?
I think the point has been missed here. When I say it is 600 by 900 mm by 18 mm panel, it is a single panel, and the entire wall is the assembly of these panels one over the above.
It's
And it is
true.
not a 18 mm thick wall. It is 89 mm thick wall because you have 18 mm thick ferrocement panel on one side, then the cavity corresponding to the C section in between, that is around 89 mm, and then you have another 18 mm panel on the other side.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
total wall
That is
thickness
my
comes out
mistake.
to be.
My mistake.
Thank you, Dr. Jain. Mr. Milan Kulkarni, please.
Uh, first and First and foremost, let me congratulate Amrut Joshi on a great work done at the
Thank you, sir.
academic level, especially the hysteresis loop, which actually talks about the great amount of strain energy below the stress strain curve of a ferrocement specimen. No, the stress strain curve for concrete is completely different. You have very little strain energy compared to ferrocement. Having said that, we who are working in the field and who are designing structures and building them and signing off as the structural stability, what I have done, or rather we have done in my office, is we have modeled it simply as ribbed shear walls with hollow square columns and regular 200 by 450 beams, pure ferrocement beams. There is no, the beam is designed as ferrocement sections, and the shear walls are having cutouts for the doors and windows. Simple arrangement, and they are ribbed basically so that there is stiffness to the entire model. And very difficult problems, we just did the analysis by Tekla modeling, STAD modeling, and ETABS. And we did the seismic response method. We did the response spectrum method and the seismic coefficient method. We calculated the base shears. The base shears were coming very, very low. So the earthquake forces, I'm going the other way around, please, in the real sense. We modeled a real building, but we found that we put the shear walls itself with cutouts, and we had stiffeners, horizontal and vertical, and the slab was also a grid slab, and we defined the slab as a horizontal diaphragm. So that also advantage we took because of the huge stiffness. And generally, when the analysis were made, we got the forces and we got the tensile, the bending compression, the direct compression, and then we designed the worst of the elements using the empirical formulas which are calculated by Dr. Divekar. So we found that they were in concurrence with the stresses that are developed with the section for the worst of live load, dead load, and wind load. And this was done in zone 4 with an importance factor of 1.5. This was most practical solution. We thought that it could work. But having said that, we have relied only on the empirical calculations of calculating the strength of the individual members in tension, bending tension, compression, and shear. This has to be validated. This same model has to be eventually validated in the college, that the work that you are doing. And once that is validated, then this empirical calculations that we have made has some value or some weightage. Otherwise, it is purely an exercise on using an empirical setup and doing it on an analytical level. But I believe that we did two structures like that, and we have not found, of course, there was no seismic activity of that magnitude also in that area. So that testing in the real sense has not been done. But we find that huge amount of ductility is available in the section. And that is the key to everything compared to RCC. So ribbed shear walls both vertically and horizontally with cutouts, square hollow columns with 25 mm thickness, grid slabs with 20 millimeter thickness, and 25 millimeter thickness, and the rib 2 inches, that is 50 millimeters, total 75. With this, we modeled everything, and we applied the regular forces at the nodes. Now, this was very complicated because there were a lot of vertical and horizontal drifts. So the load also, number of loads increased, but the load was also transferred uniformly. And in spite of having a 25 mm thick shear wall, again I'm saying 25 mm thick shear wall, ribbed at very close spacings, 1.5 meter both ways. It has worked wonderfully well analytically. And if somebody were to cross-check this model in the field or in the laboratory, we are very sure that it will yield the results in earthquake mode. As far as dead plus live is concerned, it was not a problem at all. We worked out also the drift, story drift, which was of inconsequence. It was of no meaning at all. So I believe that this has great value. So
Okay.
that is what work we have done, and and found very compatible equations and ability to calculate the stresses and strains for the ferrocement cross sections. But for bending, for tension, for direct compression, and the base shear values are very, very low. So that again indicates that the weight is directly connected to the earthquake load. Earthquake load ही
Yes.
कम हो गया तो सब कुछ कम हो गया.
Ferrocement as a earthquake material which has got good resistance for earthquake resistance, we'll have to consider first its properties as a material. And in that case, as you see in the multiple cracking zone, it has can heavy loads it can take. That means energy absorption capacity is tremendous. And that energy absorption capacity can be worked out, and that can be corrected with the mass of the structure. Already lightweight structure it is because the thin walls we are using in ferrocement construction. So it can be how much mass can be available to take that much energy, that much absorb energy that can be worked out. That is one of the ways in which the material property can be used. Secondly, when we consider ferrocement as a material, in that case, particularly we'll have to consider its dynamic properties. And dynamic properties will be included mainly for impact and all that. That will be considered. Secondly, when we consider it as an earthquake resisting structure, in that case, we'll have to consider the method of construction also. 100% ferrocement constructions can be made, and in that case, we can have the method which is developed by us and used in practice also as cavity walls and hollow floors stiffened with columns and beams. They will be providing us an arrangement to have Y flange H beams in both directions, and that will be the best system for stiffened diaphragms. So while constructing itself, we can have a ferrocement method which is developed as all-in-one method and stiffened with columns and beams. It can be used in place of shear walls and stiffened diaphragms. So that method is also important and it can be used.
My opinion is when you use ferrocement in panels onto a metal frame, and where you also reinforce the brick building, the school building, my opinion, you should design a component out of ferrocement that does other things, such as a gutter, a ferrocement gutter that is also the band around the building, because you'll collect the water, and it's probably stronger than just ferrocement this way. Can't see it. Flat ferrocement if you curve it like a component and make a gutter system. And you could do it also, you could make window boxes so the building looks better, but it's very strong if you band the building like you have. But if you make a component out of it, like a shape,
we can definitely consider a component-wise strength, and by virtue of the shape of the component, maybe it's a window opening or a lintel or anything, it has got a different strength altogether. And when we integrate it to the structure, how it behaves in as a component within a totality of a structure, this is how we should look at the structure as well. So this is what I feel, and we are conducting some experiments along with the components integrated with the structure as well. And as Divekar sir has said that there should be something which will be studied for the energy absorption capacity of the ferrocement. So, but definitely I feel that more we experiment with it, more we try to analyze it, we feel that we can definitely arrive at the design values of the ferrocement with respect to different design properties.
Very rightly said, and really it's a great thing you are doing in MIT. Dr. Sunil Kute sir, for his concluding comments on today's presentation.
Instead of concluding comments, I would say let us first congratulate Professor Joshi under guidance of Arun Purandare, Dr. Purandare. He has done very excellent work, very nice work.
Mm.
And as repeatedly it was said that this is academic work, academic work, academic work. I
Mm.
have little reservation on this word, academic word. To me, theory and academics doesn't go away from each other. Both are complementing each other. Both are same. These are two sides of the same coin, and therefore the field people should not keep all academicians somewhere in a different group of academics. Academicians should not put field people in a group. Both are one and same. So, what the practice, the field is strongly, if it is superstructure, this is the foundation, academics is the foundation. So, this is the thing. It is really a very wonderful practical work you have done, Professor Joshi. I have one question before going for the conclusion, that this is a nice example of the composite structure. I will not say it is a ferro structure, because steel girders were there, steel sections were there, and these were screwed to that. So it is a composite section. I have the question that this in such a composite structure, the bond and anchorage plays very important role. You have screwed the panels to the steel sections, so that bond and as well as that anchorage of the screw, its stability will be governing the stability of the panel and the safety of the panel. So how you encountered with this, how you have taken the cognizance of this length of maybe screw length, maybe the bond strength, maybe the connection between the panel and the section?
Yeah, so there are two aspects to your question, sir. One is what has been done in literature. So just before I presented my work, I have shown various researchers have already worked on this form, but with different types of claddings like gypsum board, steel sheathing, or like that. So we have a guideline from those researchers so that we can select the spacing of the screw in such a fashion that before the global failure occurs, the screws themselves will not fail, or they will not fail, pose the problem. That is one answer. The second answer is, in my finite element simulations, I have discretely modeled these screws as shear connectors, and through all my IDA curve generation or through analysis for various earthquakes, not for a single earthquake, for a given spacing of 150 mm, the screw stresses have exceeded their limits. So by that way, I am very sure that this spacing is good enough. However, if you are asking me the parametric study, that if 150 mm can be made 300, then what happens? Yes, that parametric study has not yet been done, because I thought we will wait first. Due to this pandemic, we could not validate this analytical model with the experiments. So let us do this experimental validation with 150 mm spacing first, and then we will go ahead with the further parameterization of finite element analysis. That was the thought process that I gave.
Thank you all for the very well presentation, to particularly Dr. Arun Purandare sir, Dr. Joshi, and their colleague Dr. Mudala Kulkarni for excellent research work. And be with us on the next talk show, 9 on the next Saturday.